Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of the box set for Rultmoork from Adventure a Week Games. This is written by Jonathan G. Nelson, and the box set, which is what I'm about to review, carries an MSRP of $129.99. Now, you can grab the 144-page hardcover alone for an MSRP of $39.99, or grab just the PDF for $32.99. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the box set for Rultmoork. A few things I want to mention before I jump on in. First of all, the fine folks over at AAW Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's very important that you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the adventure, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what's in the book and discuss the adventure as well. Lastly, this is a 5e Dungeons & Dragons adventure, so if you're a player and maybe your Dungeon Master has picked up Rultmoork, maybe they're considering picking this up, by all means, I recommend tune out now. Because as much as I want to try to stay away from major spoilers, there are going to be some spoilers here, and you don't want the surprises of the adventure ruined because you watch this review. Now, of course, if your Dungeon Master is considering picking up Rultmoork, let them know about this video, because that way they can approach this and make an informed buying decision. Right, so first of all, this is the box set, and it's got a really nice box. Nice and sturdy. We actually have artwork with the top and bottom of the box. So this is the setting. This is the region that the Fort Rultmoork is located, and it is desolate, it's lifeless, and this is the state of this region when the adventure begins. Now, if the players are successful with the adventure, they will bring life back to the region. I thought that was kind of cool, a little extra mile as far as the production with the box set. The box set also includes 2 full sets of polyhedral dice, green, which represents stagnation, and blue, which represents flow. And we also have some plastic tokens here, stagnation tokens and flow tokens. We've got some new elemental mechanics which use stagnation and flow. They're kind of polar opposites. And I'll talk about stagnation and flow in a little more detail in just a few. We have 4 punch boards of standees. We don't have any stands, but we do have the standees. Artwork on these, really, really nice. I will point out that the artwork is repeated on many of these, where we have the minions that the player characters are going to encounter, have combat encounters with. So we don't have a variety of art for these, but we do have plenty of them. So you aren't going to run out of standees for any of the encounters with cultists or undead. Really like this rock hatchling. It's very cool, and it's huge. So as you can see, really nice artwork throughout. And we've got new creatures involved in this adventure, which are contained in a bestiary at the end, towards the end of the book. We also have 6 pre-generated characters, which are actually not designed for use with the players to start the adventure. These are actually used during the flashback sequence of the adventure. It is not mandatory that you run the flashback, but I would definitely recommend it because it's going to bring more of the backstory to life and kind of drive home what's at stake in this adventure. So we've got that. We have handouts for the players, Many of these are from the point of view of the player character. Dual-sided. Pretty cool. There is the spire that the fort is located on, and there is the stone bridge, which is the only way to actually reach Fort Rultmoork. We also get some handouts of magic items, just like so. All right, so let's get on into the adventure. And one of the things I'm going to mention too is there is a soundtrack for Rultmoork. It is not just 20 minutes of music, it's like 3 hours long. Thought that was kind of cool. Rultmoork is a 5e D&D adventure for 4 to 6 characters for levels 5 to 7 at the beginning, and at the end they should be around levels 9 to 11. So the situation with Rultmoork is 1,000 years ago, Fort Rultmoork protected this water clock, and the water clock provided, obviously enough, water for the region, which is what brought life to this region. Now, there were followers of this deity Vasi who maintained the water clock and protected the water clock, and they were led by a high priestess. Now, war broke out in the region, and the followers of Vasi thought that the best plan of action would be to cut off the water clock and the fort from the rest of the world in order to make sure that the water continued to flow. Well, at one point, the high priestess sees all the death and devastation and pestilence that this war has brought to the region and begins to feel that the flow is not the way, that life brings death. And she starts looking towards stagnation, where nothing changes, everything stays the same. And with stagnation, there is no death. Now there's no growth, there's no change, just stagnation. So she becomes a heretic and turns her back on the deity and actually brings many of the followers along to her viewpoint. So what they end up doing is they end up breaking the water clock so it no longer provides water, and that's what causes this region to die out. And once again, this takes place about 1,000 years before the beginning of this adventure. So there are 3 main things going on with Rultmoork. We have Fort Rultmoork, which is on top of the spire. We have the dungeons of Rultmoork, which is down, well, the entrance is kind of near the base of the spire. And then we also have a flashback adventure. And it's not imperative that you run the flashback, but I really, really recommend you do, because it really brings this whole setting to life, and you get to see what was going on here and what takes place when the water clock is being shut down, being broken. So the main gist is the player characters are going to look to repair the water clock and put it back into action. Now, the players can approach this adventure either from the fort to begin with, or I should say the ruins of the fort to begin with, or from the dungeon itself. I got to be honest, I would probably try to steer the players to the fort ruins as opposed to the dungeon. And one of the reasons is because there are these oddball cultists who live in the ruins who are now under the influence of stagnation. So they don't change, they don't grow older, they don't learn. And it's really interesting. And I would definitely role play them as really oddballs. And they can get injured and they reset the next day, so they're completely healed. They live off of rotted food and bugs and grubs and things like that. Stuff that would probably make most people sick, even possibly kill them. Doesn't affect them because, once again, they reset the next day. And the entrance to the water clock is also located up in the ruins of the fort. So once again, I would certainly kind of recommend that that's where you start the adventure. I will also point out that this is a difficult adventure. You may have seen the interview I did with Thilo Graf when I stopped by AAW Games at Gen Con. We discussed Rultmoork, and he brought up like Tomb of Horrors, which is considered by many to be the most difficult adventure ever created for Dungeons and Dragons. To be honest, I'm not a fan because it's really a funhouse sort of adventure. There's no logic to it. There are far too many cases of miss a saving throw and you're dead. Thankfully, that doesn't take place with Rultmoork, but there are portions of the adventure where things could come to a screeching halt if your players don't piece clues together or figure out riddles. And as a dungeon master, you don't want to necessarily be just handing out information and holding the player's hands throughout an entire adventure. So there is a lot of things going on. There are a lot of moving parts to Rultmoork. This is certainly not an adventure that you can just take the book out of the box, sit everybody down and say, okay, zero prep, let's play. This has got a lot of prep involved for the dungeon master. So I recommend as a DM, you've got quite a bit of experience under your belt as well. There are some really cool set pieces to Rultmoork, but there are also aspects to this that I would tweak because the reality is, even though this adventure doesn't take place across a large area, in fact, the ruins of the fort and the dungeon are relatively small. There is tons going on within these areas. In fact, let me jump back here. You're going to find at a glance boxes. And there is a lot packed into this at a glance. To be very honest with you, I don't know how useful these boxes are. In fact, there's at least one that I know of that's 2 pages in length. To me, that's not at a glance. That's I'm reading 2 pages to find stuff. There's also no index to the book, sadly enough. Although the table of contents is pretty detailed, I do wish that there was an index. But a lot of moving pieces to this adventure and a lot of things that the dungeon master has to keep track of. So I have to knock the adventure a little bit because of so much that's going on. Plus, we also have the stagnation, we also have the flow, and it's almost like 2 new mechanics that we have to learn because you can use these stagnation tokens for different things. You can use these flow tokens for different things. You can convert the tokens from one to another. And then on top of that, there are a lot of ways for the players to come to a screeching halt. So this is a complex adventure and there is a lot going on. We've got some cool NPCs. The big bad, the priestess, is now sort of a lich, and she controls these stagnation elementals. The player characters should have an opportunity to control flow elementals. Eventually, what's going to happen is the player characters need to find 2 tiers of Vasi. One located in the ruins of the fort, one in the dungeon. And then they have to repair the water clock. They have to clean out blocked areas of the water clock and then use these 2 tiers to bring the clock back into working order. Now, before that takes place, the climax of the adventure is going to feature a big battle, not only between the big bad and the player characters, but also the big bad's minions and stagnation elementals. And the player characters have an opportunity to lead flow elementals. So this could turn out to be just a massive battle at the end of the adventure, which some people will really love. Other people may find that to be a little overwhelming. But I do want to say the big bad is pretty interesting, and she isn't just some one-note villain. Now we're going to wrap up. We're going to see those handouts once again here in the book, which of course, if you've got the box set, you've already got the handouts. And lastly, we've got those pre-gen characters for the flashback sequence. All right, that is the adventure book. So let's swing on over to the other camera. So I'm going to share some final thoughts and give this a review score. So the adventure itself, solid adventure. Complex adventure, though, got to point that out. I would probably have a difficult time running it myself. Just being honest. And there are some things that I would tweak and change, probably to make life easier for myself and for the players. Once again, this is not designed for newcomers to the hobby, either as players or as dungeon masters. You got to have some experience under your belt to get the most out of this. I do wish that the book was written to be easier to run at the table. Even those at-a-glance boxes, I don't think are all that useful, unfortunately. But all in all, very solid adventure. Now, if you are leaning towards picking up the box set itself, standees are really nice, like the artwork quite a bit. The handouts, the paper stock should hold up to repeated use at your table. You got the 2 sets of dice and the tokens. So it is cool stuff. Of course, let's not forget the soundtrack, but I don't necessarily think that it's a must-have if you want to run Rultmoork, especially if you're a dungeon master like myself who engages more in theater of the mind as opposed to using standees and miniatures and so forth at the table. I'm actually going to kind of give this 2 scores. So the adventure itself, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give a 7.5. Do think it's a good adventure. I find the setting to be interesting. Just a complex adventure. That's about it. And I say the box set, all in all, I give an 8 out of 10. Do like it. I think there's a lot of useful items in it. I just don't think it's essential if you want to run Rultmoork, but pretty cool stuff nonetheless. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for checking out this review. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you out there get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.